What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball because it is time to preview Week 2 of the 2025 NFL season, and here to do just that is our good friend, looking very handsome over there today. It is Justin Boone. Boone, what's going on, buddy?
Man, it is a busy week, and I know we talk like all summer long about how like draft season is so important, and it is. But I find like week 1 maybe to be the most important fantasy week of the year because that's the time when we get to find out like, were some of those theories we had in the summer true? Are they not true? Was it just a bad matchup or a good matchup based on who they were going up against? Like, there's so many things that need to be sorted out this week, and we're going to try to do that as we now shift gears and head into week 2.
Right. That's the most difficult thing about week 1 is because while we don't truly know about these offenses and like their intent, we also don't really know how good the defenses are on the other side of the ball. I mean, we have some inclination, right? Like Cam Ward going against the Broncos. We're like, all right, that's a tough spot. That's a tough spot for the rookie. We can kind of use that as like a caveat for anything he does. But, you know, I made this point a lot yesterday with Nate about the Detroit Lions offense, where it's like, yeah, that was a struggle, but that Packers defense might be like the best defense in the league. And I will say, I know we're a show. We're going to get to the show here in a second. People don't like to read anymore, Boone, but I did just put a big article out about the Lions and like really went more in depth. So if you want to get more freaked out about the Detroit Lions, I would recommend people just go ahead and read that one on the website. I'm trying to sell you on reading here, and I'm saying like if you want to panic more about the Lions. I will say though, buddy, shout out to us for like even being willing to do the contrarian corner episode about like, hey, what if this Lions things goes really wrong? And it's just 1 week. And obviously I'm still invested in some Lions players, so this isn't something I'm rooting for to happen. But basically anything, my conclusion was this from this article is that everything that you thought could be wrong about the Lions, like from a coaching angle and an interior offensive line angle, it really was all on display in week 1. But we're going to try to do some of that stuff here today, which is try to uncover these things.
I was going to say, like, I remember before we did that Contrarian Corner episode, you apologized to me. You were like, I'm really sorry this is your first episode and we have to try to pick apart like the best offenses in the league. But I'm glad that it looks like maybe we hit on something there with the Lions, right? And of course, like you said, like you can look at it a million different ways. It wasn't just a matchup. It was they were outdoors and we know Jared Goff splits and all that sort of stuff. But that's why we have to try to figure this stuff out. And we have to adapt very quickly because I think the people who hold on to their priors and just try to keep pushing it through and keep thinking that it's going to come around, those are the people that are going to be left behind. So we have to figure out what was accurate, what wasn't, and we got to switch up on the fly here and make some moves.
And that is certainly what we're going to try to do here on the Week 2 preview show. If you didn't watch Week 1, you're just joining us today. Here's how this show works now. First 2 segments of the show will feature Boone's 6-pack of questions for each week's slate of games. Segment number 3 is going to be literally no one's games of the week. I pick 3 games that are not headlines by any means, but you do need to care about these potential lovable freak show matchups from a fantasy perspective. And then segment 4 is going to be the hurry up offense where Boone and I throw some rapid fire questions at each other, maybe some predictions. And the twist there is that one guy gets to throw the flag and make the other expand on their answer here. My prediction this week, Boone, is that I think I have one that you're going to throw the flag on me for to have to explain myself a little bit more. But let's first get into Boone's 6-pack of questions for week 2. I mean, that little pop there, that got me in the mood to talk some ball. All right, what is the first question for this week, Boone?
Well, you know we have to start here, Harmon, because we did the show on Monday together. This was before this game actually happened. Which version of J.J. McCarthy should we expect moving forward? And I will admit right off the bat, we haven't really talked about this.
No, we haven't.
Basically like an existential crisis for the first half of that game. I started to like contemplate my career. Man, I went on KOC's show, Kevin O'Connor, yesterday, and what was the very first question he asked me? What he said, you know, I saw that bold prediction you made about J.J. McCarthy, and then we had to talk about J.J. McCarthy. Of course, apparently everyone saw that. I could have said top 10. I could have said top 12. I had to get wild and say top 5, and it looked so bad for a while there, to the point when I was like, man, am I going to have to figure out another career? Like, what kind of damage control am I going to have to do Tuesday morning? And yet later in the game, Thankfully, it came around, but it was only basically one quarter where he came through, and he came through in a very big way, and it was everything that I thought he could be. And yet it was only one quarter. Now, we can give a lot of credit to the defense. I mean, Dennis Allen did a great job with that defense. They were down some players in the secondary. They still fought. That was a very, very tough performance from them. So kudos to the Bears. This is not a knock on the Bears at all. But McCarthy coming through in that game without their tackle, Christian Darrisaw, who we hope he's going to be back soon. That could be a positive for the offense. We'll see. Like, there's other injuries in the offensive line now. Ryan Kelly, he missed practice early in the week here. He's dealing with an injury now, the center. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on that offensive line. We know Jordan Addison's coming back at some point. So there's a lot to be excited about down the road. But immediately going into week 2, this is another matchup here with the Falcons. This is a positive matchup in my eyes. What version of McCarthy are we going to get? Are we going to have to wait 3 quarters before he lights it up in the fourth again? Or are we actually going to see him come out in the first quarter and look like some version of that quarterback we saw late in the game?
I mean, yeah. Producer Colin and I were worried about you, buddy. Were you
no
Colin
wellness check or anything? Like, you guys didn't even reach out on that. We were all just clutching our pearls. Oh no, yeah.
Let me tell you what, because if I was you, and I've been in this situation before where you make like a big prediction about something and then like it goes about as horribly as it possibly could. For you, luckily, for about like 85% of the game, he was just for 85% of the game, he was the worst quarterback we've ever seen. Luckily, you had that 15% where he was maybe the best quarterback we've ever seen, or at least obviously one of the most productive. He finishes the week as quarterback 12 in fantasy football. So like now you're on the right track, pal. You're trending up. But no, I've been in that situation before. I'm like, the last thing I want is someone to like message me about it. Like I always come back to Brandon Ayuk week 1 of the 2021 season, because that was like, oh my guy in that offseason. The first year we launched the Reception Perception website, and I'm like, oh my God, we're gonna go out of business. Like I'm literally gonna I'm a joke, because he didn't that dude didn't even play in week 1 against the Lions, except like deep like the 4th receiver basically. So I was, and the last thing I needed was a bunch of jackasses blowing me up about where's Brandon Ayuk, as if I know. So I'm never going to message you in that situation, be like, oh, JJ McCarthy or anything. No. I'm going to leave you alone.
Well, but you don't want to be on the other end of it, right? Like, I did get a couple messages from people on social media, and they were calling me out, but it was the first quarter when he had like 5 passing yards.
Yes.
And then thankfully by the end of the game, the way those messages were worded, they look quite silly at that point. So you also don't want to be that guy where you're just trying to bury somebody in the first half. And yet it's all 4 quarters that count, and we see him eventually come through and at least show some signs of life here that we can cling to moving forward, right? So I'm still very excited. I mean, this week, Harmon, I'm probably higher on him the most. Again, I have him at that QB 12 spot in my rankings for week 2.
That is brave.
I think that, like, I mean, everything stands that I said before, right? Like, there was a reason why we viewed this guy, or at least I did, going into the season, because of that Kevin O'Connell system, everyone there. This environment is going to be good for quarterbacks. And the fact that this was his first NFL start, he's basically a rookie, even though he redshirted last year. This was his first start against what was a tougher defense than we thought. We will admit that. And yeah, there was some struggles early on, but they kept the confidence in him. And that is such a big confidence builder for not just him, but for the whole team, right? Believing that they can come through, that he can get it done for them, that he's able to show those signs of being that player that can run a little bit, that can use those weapons like Justin Jefferson. TJ Hawkinson didn't have that big of a game. I think he'll be better going forward. But yeah, it was very, very worrisome for 3 quarters. I am going to cling to the belief that what we saw in the fourth, he's not going to put up 3 touchdowns a quarter. That's ridiculous. But we're going to see something a little bit closer to the guy that we saw later in the game, who had command of that offense, who seemed more confident. I'm willing to put my faith in Kevin O'Connell and in the system and in the players that they have there. And that McCarthy, there'll be some ups and downs like there was in week 1, but that he is going to come along and be a pretty good real life quarterback and a pretty good fantasy quarterback and a borderline QB1, like I have him ranked this week.
I think if you're going to be optimistic about JJ McCarthy, the thing that you're telling yourself for sure is that they figured out not just him, but the whole offense the longer that the game went on. Like they leaned really hard into the run game, specifically with Jordan Mason, who I want to talk about here in a second. They specifically leaned into Jordan Mason on those like power runs, which is why they went and they got Jordan Mason, was to give themselves more of just like a steady, consistent ground game as opposed to just all outside zone stuff with Aaron Jones like it mostly was in 2024 with Sam Darnold. And at the end of the game, like JJ McCarthy was still 20% attempts of 15+ air yards downfield. Like it wasn't totally dink or dunk. Like he obviously had to start pushing it. Sam Darnold was around 23% the year before. So it is going to be slightly less downfield oriented, but they're still going to push the football. But not only I think they figured out what they wanted to do from an offensive standpoint. I think he just got more comfortable with the speed of the game, because definitely like he was just so slow at the start of the game. Boone, to me, that's what I noticed. And also that play where he was like jumping or not the play, but on the sideline where he was kind of like jumping around like in anticipation, his hat fell off. That was when I was honestly like, oh my God, it's so over for this guy, which is so unfair. But I did have that thought. But yeah, I wanted to ask you about Jordan Mason specifically, because to me, that's what I thought I know Aaron Jones obviously had the bigger fantasy day, but I think from a process standpoint, last week was a good sign for Jordan Mason.
Yeah, absolutely. We heard all offseason it was going to be this 50-50 committee, and that's exactly what we saw. And it was actually Jordan Mason getting the edge of that 50-50 committee. Now, Aaron Jones got the receiving touchdown, so he ended up with a better fantasy day. And yet snaps, touches, yards, like everything went Mason's way. And it wasn't by that much. But what a sign for a guy that came in. You thought he was the number 2 behind this older running back. We thought he'd get some work, but it's probably going to require an Aaron Jones injury for him to actually be decent in fantasy. And yet, no, it looks like he's essentially the lead back in what's going to be pretty close to a 50-50 committee. But he was the far more effective guy. He was the more explosive guy. He was breaking through the line, like you were saying. Like he was the one that seemed to kind of give this offense a little bit of life along the way. And that's a great sign. Like we were recommending taking him where he was going, even when the ADP was rising over the summer. I kept saying, take him, because we know the possibility is there for an Aaron Jones injury. And if that happens, now we're talking about top 12, top 15 fantasy back. But even without that, I think this is going to be a guy that could be a low end RB2, high end RB3. He's going to get the touchdowns some weeks. It's not always going to be Aaron Jones scoring receiving touchdowns. And that's a great sign. And then on top of that, as McCarthy gets more comfortable out there, as McCarthy starts to assert himself, that's just going to lead to more scoring opportunities and more for this offense. And I think in the next couple of games, like I want to keep giving credit to that Bears defense, because it's going to get easier for this offense now moving forward, right? They get the Falcons this week. They get the Bengals in week 3. You look at those two teams, they give up the 5th and 6th most fantasy points to quarterbacks last year. Baker Mayfield just hit up the Falcons for 3 touchdowns. So McCarthy's in a spot now where it might be a little bit easier, a little friendlier in week 2 for him. And now that he does have that experience and he kind of caught up to the speed of the game, like you're talking about, now maybe he can come out of the gate and take advantage of it in week 2.
Yeah, right now in our weekly rankings, we all you, Scott, and we all have these guys, these running backs, like in the RB3 range. So definitely guys you can consider as your flex options. But speaking of those Bears, let's get to your second question for this week.
I don't feel like enough people, maybe I just haven't consumed enough content this week because I've been busy, but I don't feel like enough people are talking about the Ben Johnson revenge game, right? What is he going to do against the Lions? He's been thinking about this. He has been thinking about this all off season long. What is he going to be able to do against that team? Unfortunately for him, it's early in the season, so he doesn't have that long runway to get everybody up to speed, to get everybody comfortable in his system. And we saw on Monday night, right? There were some ups and downs in that game for sure. We saw some flashes. We also saw Caleb Williams kind of looking like maybe he was slow processing things out there and still dealing with some of the issues that he had last season, overthrowing some guys and things like that. But again, I'm willing to give them a little bit of time because I look at this like there was all these issues with that organization last year, and they need to kind of get rid of those demons and move forward. And I don't know, did you see the Jacob Dunn article that came out that like about the Bears and everything? Kind of painted Caleb in a negative light, right? It kind of, if you read that,
Ty Dunn, right?
Tyler Dunn. Sorry, Tyler Dunn. Tyler Dunn. So it kind of painted him in, a negative light, but it wasn't anything like that surprising to me, right? Like it was like, okay, he's a little arrogant. He's a little immature. Like he's a little tougher to coach. Like those were all things that I think were pretty evident in like the pre-draft process. Like that was his personality. Like who's surprised by any of that? Sometimes when you have athletes, when you have anyone that's talented in their field, they might have a little bit of an ego that you have to deal with. You might have to treat them a different way. That's what happens. And I don't think the coaching staff last year was anywhere near equipped to deal with that. I think Ben Johnson is. I think the coaching staff they have there now is going to be able to get this right. It's the question, how long is it going to take? And this week in such an important game for Ben Johnson, what are they going to be able to do? They had to have a tough matchup last week against that Brian Flores defense. So, hats off to Brian Flores and them for keeping them in the game and eventually allowing the Vikings to win. But this is going to be another huge test where the Lions know Ben Johnson very well, where Ben Johnson knows the Lions very well. And now we're going to get to see like how ready are these guys going to be? And did he put in a little extra time in the offseason focusing on that week 2 matchup, getting ready to potentially show his old team something? I can't wait for this game. I think it's going to be huge.
I'm almost kind of glad from a takes perspective that this is buried at the 1 p.m. Eastern slate, because after just the avalanche of opinions and reaction, myself included, like I made the mistake of tweeting about Caleb Williams and like showing some film clips and like get in the mix of that on Tuesday morning. But just after that, like avalanche of reactions to that Island game, because that's what happens. We forget that. And once we get into football season, like Island games are going to start to tell the story of the season, even if that's not always fair. So I'm almost kind of glad that Caleb and the Bears get kind of buried here on a 1 p.m. slate. Out there, they're still the Bears, and this is a big matchup. To your point, it's Ben Johnson going back to Detroit. Detroit kind of not on the ropes, but obviously trying to get back after a bad week 1 showing. There's going to be a lot of attention on this game, but at least it's not on like freaking Sunday Night Football or something, So I think that takes some of the pressure off of the whole thing. But yeah, there's a lot to learn in this particular game, and still I think that even Boone, if we come out of this game and Caleb Williams is still up and down, he's still kind of turning down some open throws deep and over the middle. There are some, misses. I think there, he's still working through the accuracy concerns. I'm still not going to be like rushing to judgment, because a slow start for this unit was what, at least on this show, we expected, right? We expected it to take some time for Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams to mesh, along with everybody else to mesh in this offense too.
Let me ask you this. Do you buy into the revenge narrative at all? And I asked that because what we saw last week, right? Like that Jets-Steelers game, and we'll talk about those teams a little later, but that game, it was very evident that revenge was on the table, right? Like Aaron Rodgers just came out after the game and said it, that like he wanted to beat everybody in that Jets organization. I do. Like when I'm doing my rankings, it's not like the main thing that I'm factoring in, but I tend to bump guys up a little bit when there is that situation where they're going up against their old team. I don't know how to approach it though when it's a coach going against his old team. I think it factors in a little bit, but it's a little harder than just taking a player who's going against his old team and going, all right, maybe the team goes out of their way to help him get a touchdown in this game. Like maybe that matters to them or something, right? When it's a coach, it's a little tougher to factor in, but I do think it's important to consider.
It's probably important to consider from like they know each other perspective. I mean, I think that there were times where you could tell Brian Flores is like, yeah, I've seen this Ben Johnson offense before on Monday night, because they've been in the division together. But from a revenge perspective, I'd actually say that the one group that wants to get revenge on the other in this scenario is like, I think Lions fans like kind of sneakily want to get revenge on Ben Johnson. There was like a weird narrative coming out of the playoffs last year because they got kind of rocked against the Commanders, and the offense certainly, there were some, listen, people love the trick plays until it's Jameson Williams throwing an interception off a trick play in a playoff game. Then it's not so cool, all the trick plays. But, did Ben Johnson, like he already had this Bears, he goes to a division rival. Was he already mailing in the playoff game? I even saw a reporter ask this week, Ben Johnson, did you consider the feelings of the Lions fans before taking the Bears head coaching job, which is, what a friggin' ridiculous question to ask the head coach of a football team. So I don't really know what Ben Johnson would want to get revenge on the Lions for, but I kind of think there are some Lions fans that want the Lions to get revenge on Ben Johnson for ditching them, especially after last week we come out and not a very good showing from our guy, John Morton, the Lions offensive coordinator. So maybe there's even more of an appetite for revenge there.
I will say too, I mean, I guess if we're talking about revenge, there's a little bit, it won't be the first time that he's going against them, but there's a little bit of DeAndre Swift going against his old team as well. DeAndre Swift, I don't know if we want to talk about this too much because, I mean, the Bears thing's more focused on Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams and those guys, but DeAndre Swift looked, in my mind, not great in week one, right? Like he got a lot of,
he looked like DeAndre Swift.
He got a lot of opportunity, and that's great, but did not do that much with it, unfortunately. And then you come out of that game and you have Ben Johnson already talking about Kamanungai getting more involved after saying in the summer that Kamanungai was a guy that they're going to be able to trust in the fall. I'm worried about DeAndre Swift. I told you that before the year I was worried about him. I said these first two matchups were going to be very tough for him. I think that's also going to complicate things for the Bears because I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball at all. Last year, that Lions defense very strong against the run from a fantasy perspective. They gave up the 5th fewest fantasy points to running backs. Week 1, they were right back at it. They were 11th. I don't think that we're going to see Swift get this going here. So that's going to put even more pressure now on Caleb Williams and that passing attack in this one. Maybe the more interesting thing that you could give your thoughts on, I don't know if you've talked about this on the show this week, Rome Odunze. Was I right? Do you think he is kind of transitioned to become the number 1 receiver in Chicago? Is that still on the table? Like, he led them in targets in that game, even though he didn't have the biggest stats. I think that is still where this is going.
Yeah, real quick, just on DeAndre Swift, he led all running backs with a 95.2% share of the running back touches on a running back's individual team. So we'll see. I bet that's coming down with Kyle Monungai maybe getting more involved. Maybe Roshan Johnson's active for this game. So good luck hanging on to the Swift volume for as long as you can if for whatever reason you listen to this podcast and you have
with
DeAndre
him getting
Swift
all that
team.
Volume, the Bears had the worst success rate of all running back runs of any team in the league in week 1.
Of course.
Yeah, you're not in good hands when you're giving the ball to Swift that much.
I can't believe they just walked into the season with DeAndre Swift as their lead back. It's just it's crazy, especially because Ben Johnson knows DeAndre Swift. Anyways, about Rome Odunze, yeah, I do think Rome Odunze, based on the targets, the usage last week, I'm not going to say he's fully locked in as the obvious top pass catcher in this team, but I do think if you, which I obviously did, go back and chart and watch the plays on film. It's a lot of stuff that's designed for Rome Odunze to be the first read in the concept because it's the vertical in-breaking routes, the dig routes. Caleb Williams just has to throw those, but those are designed for the player that plays Rome Odunze's position, which is I line up at all 3 positions. He's not Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he has moved around the formation. So I do think right now I would consider him the top pass catcher in this offense, but that doesn't mean that DJ Moore won't have weeks. DJ Moore was definitely set up for a few shot plays last week that Caleb Williams, missed, or maybe DJ Moore was a little off on it as well. So I do think it's not clear cut. He's blowing everybody out in the water, but I do think at this point that I would have Rome Odunze ranked as the top Bears pass catcher, which I did come into the season. I do right now heading into week 2 and still kind of a wide receiver 3 flex play for me for Rome Odunze, but definitely right now he'd be the guy that I'd most want from this offense. Let's definitely go to the other side of the league rankings here for your third question, leaving the Bears zone and maybe going to a team that's a bit more storied the last few years.
Well, this one is the game that I think more people are talking about, but I don't know that it's going to be the better game. I want to know, how worried should we be about the Chiefs offense? They got through in week 1. We knew Rashee Rice wasn't going to be there because of the suspension. We did not expect that Xavier Worthy was going to get hurt at the very beginning of the game. I know he's back out at practice this week. Do we really think they're going to put him out there? I'm still pretty skeptical that he's going to play in week 2. I wonder whether this is Andy Reid kind of playing games. It's a shoulder injury. Let's put you, in a jersey out there in your pads. They clearly have something on that shoulder. Run around a little bit, make the Eagles think that you're going to be on the field, so they have to plan for you. But in the end, they don't put him out there because I have a hard time believing that after what happened in week 1, he's going to be able to go out there in week 2 and sustain any sort of hit and not redamage that shoulder in some way. But that's me kind of speculating a little bit. Regardless, no Rashee Rice, Xavier Worthy questionable or playing at less than 100%, Travis Kelce on the decline. we're looking now at like Hollywood Brown going from like a field stretcher guy, like a speedy guy, to now a volume play. Like, it's not what he is. He got it done in week 1, but I don't think you want to run your offense that way. And then it's Juju Smith-Schuster, who's not the player he used to be, Tyquan Thornton, who's like this ultimate reclamation project. And I know those guys had moments, and maybe Patrick Mahomes, the Bills fan in me, has like PTSD when you think about the Chiefs in this way, and you just go, oh my God, Mahomes is going to find some way to come through and get it done, and they're going to avoid 0-2 and they're going to be fine. But I'm really, really worried about the Chiefs offense from a fantasy perspective and about the Chiefs from a real life perspective losing this game, because I know it's a Super Bowl rematch. I don't think that right now they are on the same level as the Eagles team. That defense is going to be better this week. They had some issues in week 1. Jalen Carter getting ejected before the game certainly doesn't help. But he's going to be back now. They're going to serve that suspension, last week of him being ejected, which is a very weird thing. I don't know if I've ever seen that, but that's how they're going to count it. So he's going to be out there this week. The defense is going to be back in full force. I don't think the rushing game for the Chiefs is going to get it done with Carter back out there. Now you have all these injuries and guys missing in the receiving core. Like, are you worried about this Chiefs offense at all? And again, from a fantasy perspective and a real life perspective, I'm curious.
Yes. And yes, my friend, absolutely. I am worried. I know they're playing at home. It's in Arrowhead. Eagles are just 1-point favorites. Like, they're a significantly better team right now, significantly on both sides of the ball, a better team than the Kansas City Chiefs. And I mean, just look at the skill position group. Spoiler alert, we'll talk about AJ Brown much later in the show, but still, obviously, when AJ Brown's AJ Brown, he's way better. Like, you could put all these Chiefs guys together in some kind of megazord and you're still not close to AJ Brown's talent level. I mean, last week, 4 wide receivers had a 40% share or more of their team's targets. Number 1, Jackson Smith-Njigba at a whopping 59%, which, okay, ascending, young, star receiver, cool. Zay Flowers, number 2 for the Baltimore Ravens at 47.4%. Big time matchup against a team that can't cover anybody. Of course, 47%. Yeah, subtle shot at you there, buddy. Number 3, Garrett Wilson, obviously the number 1 alpha of his team. Number 4, Marquise Brown at 42.1%. And he did not do a lot with those targets. 6.3 air yards per target. I mean, outside of the one long reception, which was obviously all Mahomes based because he gets out of the pocket and he lets it rip and everything, he was like in Wan'Dale Robinson territory. Like, that's what Marquise Brown is. That being said, you could probably play him in fantasy if you're like desperate for a flex, you're desperate for a wide receiver 3. But then, yeah, the drop off is just absurd. Like, I think that might be one of the worst 3 receiver sets I can remember. Marquise Brown, Juju Smith-Schuster at this point in his career, and Tyquan Thornton. Like, that's brutal. And then the backfield, man, I talked about it with Ray Garvin this week. They've had I think it was like 4 10+ yard or 15+ yard runs since week 1 of last season. And then Isaiah Pacheco and Kareem Hunt literally split the backfield 50-50. And that's not to mention, like, Travis Kelce still looks like a player in decline. And the pass protection was better than it was in the Super Bowl, low bar, but it still was a little problematic. Like, this is all just Mahomes magic is what you're hoping for with this offense. So yeah, to answer your question, if that doesn't answer your question, here's a simple yes. I am very concerned about this Chiefs offense from a fantasy perspective and from a real life perspective.
Well, if you think back to the Super Bowl, like, the Eagles were able to get a lot of pressure without having to blitz that much. If that happens in this game, like, now what are the Chiefs going to do, right? Like, it's not even a circumstance. It's like, all right, Mahomes is going to be able to deal with the blitz and, find the open man and all this stuff. Like, if they're able to pressure him the way they did in the Super Bowl, it's over. Like, it's lights out. And I don't think this is even going to necessarily be that fun of a game, even though everyone's going to tout it as this big, Super Bowl rematch and everything. But we just didn't expect that the Chiefs offense was going to look like this again. We thought we were done, right? Like, and that's where it's so funny. We're like, you can be right and wrong in fantasy in the same year, in the same week, in the same game, in the same quarter. Like, things can look one way and then very quickly turn. And going into this season, we thought at one point, when the disciplinary hearing for Rashee Rice was going to be late September, that they were going to open up week 1 and have Rashee Rice and Xavier Worthy. And it was going to be this receiving core that was now going to power the offense. Mahomes is going to have all these weapons as Travis Kelce declines. And very quickly now, those top two young guys, those guys that look like they were going to be stars of this offense, are not going to be around, I don't think, this week. We'll see about Worthy, but without them, there is not a lot to hang your hat on in this offense right now, with Kelsey not really coming through. I know he had the long touchdown last week, but that was kind of fluky in my mind. I don't think he's going to get that done every week. Even Mahomes for fantasy, he had 57 or 67 rushing yards last week.
57.
He's not going to put that up every single
57
week.
yards as a scrambler. Yeah, 57 yards as a scrambler alone.
And a rushing touchdown. You're not going to be able to rely on that from him. I know he can run a little bit, but you can't put, that up every single week when you're Patrick Mahomes. So what is it going to be for this offense? Like, I don't know. I'm worried in the spots that I have any Kansas City Chiefs, other than Rashee Rice, who, when he comes back, I think is going to be the player that I expected and get a ton of volume.
Yeah, no question. It's funny. Like, typically they don't run Mahomes at all, and he doesn't really run until like the playoffs when the games really matter. And then in week one, he's running around like crazy because they need him, because that's basically all they have right now. So yeah, definitely not great stuff for the Chiefs offense. And I think that game could actually be pretty low scoring as well. The over under 47, I mean, this is going to look super wrong, but according to BetMGM, over under 47, I could definitely see that game going under. But we have gone over our time here in the first segment, so we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get through 3 more questions from Boone's 6-pack right after this. All right, we are back. Justin Boone and I are continuing to preview week 2 of the NFL season here, starting with Boone. Another question from you out of your 6-pack of questions. I got to tell you, man, this offense has me very excited, so let it rip here.
Is the Jets offense for real? Was it fueled by revenge in week 1? And was that going to be the high point on the year for them? Or is this what we're going to see? Because if you go back earlier in the offseason, right, when Aaron Glenn showed up there, when they got Justin Fields, generally I was very excited about what this offense could be. And then what happened? We had all the Breece Hall talk, everyone around the team saying, he could get traded, and this is going to be a committee backfield, and Braylon Allen looks so great, and maybe he's going to start to eat into it, and all that sort of stuff. And then when they get to training camp, it was Justin Fields looks terrible in practice, and what's going to happen to this offense? And, they're showing clips of him like just outright missing Garrett Wilson on short passes while they're at practice. And then you start to question, okay, well, volume wise, is Garrett Wilson going to be able to get there? And I kind of started to move away from my original thought on it and bump some of those guys down. And yet in week 1, Justin Fields is the kind of quarterback that you put out there, and on game day, he just finds ways to get it done and finds ways to put up points and, running with his legs, which I think you're the one who said before, he doesn't necessarily want to do that, but he does it out of necessity. And he did it this week and he got it done. There are so many things about this offense that I think are so exciting, but it revolves around just those 3 guys, right? For fantasy, it's Fields, it's Breece Hall, and it's Garrett Wilson. And they were all top 10 at their position in fantasy this week, which was huge, right? Justin Fields, the QB2 overall, Breece Hall, the RB9, Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver 6. Can we see this continue? I think we can. I think if it's going to stay this concentrated and if everybody's going to stay healthy, this is what I originally thought this offense could be. And it's really, really exciting. And I'm not even mentioning that, Braylon Allen did come through. He got a touchdown. It wasn't based on volume or anything, but that turned him into a guy that you could put in your flex, right? It's a risky flex play, TD or bust kind of guy moving forward. But this offense came through, and I'm kind of happy in the spots where I have them. I think this is legit.
Man, I feel like an idiot after 1 week buying into all the every preseason narrative about the Jets looks horrible right now. The Breece Hall was going to take a back seat to Braylon Allen and these boys. That looks bad. But what might look even worse is that Justin Fields just can't play. He looked great in week 1. I don't want to go crazy about it, but he looked calm, confident, and really had the thing that was most impressive to me was that he had such a good grasp of where the football needs to go in this offense. And again, I keep bringing up this Lions piece that I wrote because if they're going to make me write articles, please go read them. Same with Boone. Go read his articles as well. It's 2025. We're reading again. Okay. Reading is back. Don't ask me how much I'm reading. Reading is back for you guys. Reading is good for you, not for me. Anyways, but so if I'm going to write these articles, please go read them. This Lions one, I mentioned this, the offense of between like Detroit and Chicago, obviously, is with Ben Johnson, but Tanner Engstrand, like that's the offense that looked most like the Lions that I remember. Like the Lions of 2023, the Lions especially of 2024, with all this like motion at the snap, condensed formations, doing things to get Garrett Wilson wide open. And man, like Fields would hit the top of his drop back and just immediately like, where's number 5? Get him the football. Very, very impressive, very decisive for a guy that I think can play at times way too robotic and way too slow. In Justin Fields, this offense had him playing confident in time, like in rhythm and on time. Not perfect. I'm not going to go crazy with it, but that really looked great from him. The other thing that I really regret potentially overreacting to and was wrong about was the Elijah Vera Tucker injury right before week 1's game. You know, he goes out for the season, triceps injury. I'm like, oh my God, the whole point of this offense was that it was supposed to be like this great offensive line. They were going to run block and Justin Fields is going to have the best pass protection of his career. They moved Joe Tippmann from center to right guard to take Vera Tucker's spot and then insert Josh Myers, who was their backup center, used to be the Packers starting center. And that offensive line looked great against a good defensive front in the Pittsburgh Steelers, right? Like, I mean, Boone, you're a Bills fan. I think even you would admit that front has nothing on like the guys in Pittsburgh. Rookie Armand Membu is like giving TJ Watt the business in pass protection. I just can't say I was so impressed by what I saw out of the Jets in week 1. But, and this matchup against the Bills is just very different because, and what this offense is still different than what the Bills went up against and kind of got beat around by in the Baltimore Ravens. So like how much do you think that is sticky? The Derrick Henry performance against Buffalo versus like what people can expect out of Breece Hall in this matchup?
I mean, we've seen Breece Hall breaking long runs against the Bills before, so I don't think that's any sort of far-fetched situation. I definitely think he can get that done. Ed Oliver too. Ed Oliver shows up in a walking boot this week.
True.
He's going around in a little cart. Is he going to be able to play? It's an ankle injury. I don't know. I mean, when you're in a boot early in the week, doesn't seem like you're going to be available that weekend, right? So that would be concerning because Ed Oliver was incredible in that opening game, right? Like there was a few plays there where he was the guy, maybe the one guy in the Bills that had the strength to just go head to head with Derrick Henry and stop him. There aren't many on that defense that could do it. And in this matchup, I do think that Breece Hall is going to be able to come through because the Bills are just not built to stop the run like that. If you take away Ed Oliver, it is going to be incredibly problematic. Now, it's a different coaching staff. It's a different team, obviously. But you look back, like last year, the Jets didn't top 20 points in either game against the Bills. And this week, you look at what they're projected for, it's under 20 points. So, you know, Vegas might not be buying this as much as we are for fantasy, but I think this situation with the Bills defense, not just banged up with that Oliver, but remember the cornerbacks, the secondary, there's issues there. They didn't have them, you know, a bunch of guys. Like when you're talking about, you know, Trey White not being there, they lose their first round pick. I mean, in the preseason, like they thought they were going to have solutions in the secondary and now not so much. So Bills dealing with some injuries. I think that's going to allow the Jets to keep this going.
I think so too. Again, don't want to go crazy on it, but I do feel pretty good about this matchup here. Last week, obviously, Lamar Jackson tore up the Bills, but he had 15.2 yards per attempt on play action, according to Pro Football Focus, against Buffalo in week 1. Obviously, that's Lamar Jackson. It's one of the most dangerous play action games in the NFL. They did a pretty decent job of using play action in the Jets offense in week 1. Justin Fields, in terms of dropbacks with play action, around 24%, which is in like the Jaden Daniels zone as well. Jared Goff, which was a step down for Jared Goff, by the way, at the Lions offense. But anyways, yes, again, I think that they can have some success working against this Bills defense for a variety of reasons. We got more revenge here on the docket for your 5th question, Boone.
I know I debated like putting all the revenge stuff together and I was like, no, maybe that's too negative. Maybe we should break it up a little bit. But this next one is DK Metcalf, the next guy in line here for the revenge game. We talked about it already. Aaron Rodgers went out with this team. He got his revenge, talked about how much he wanted it. They came through for him. I don't know that Aaron Rodgers is the kind of guy that necessarily cares that much, that's going to go out of his way to make sure everyone else is happy. I think he wanted it for himself. But regardless, is this going to be DK Metcalf's turn? Going back to Seattle, is this going to be the spot where he's able to come through and get his revenge against his old team? I mean, there's some things you look at, like Metcalf picked up 73 of his 83 receiving yards last week after the catch. That was kind of a weird scenario. Like, that's not how we're used to seeing him, right? He led all wide receivers in yards after the contact per reception. And it ties into this, but it was a career low for him in air yards per target at just 3.2. That was from Next Gen Stats. Jory Epstein, she did a great article. She had a bunch of these stats in there. Great article on DK Metcalf over at Yahoo. Go read that. But the more you look at this Metcalf situation, I want to know what you think, Harmon, because that's not what we're used to seeing from him. He's going to be going against his old team that knows him well. Is this a good thing or a bad thing that he's kind of coming through in other ways? Like, Mike Tomlin came out and said, he can win the short game. He can win in the long game. He called him a combat guy. What was it? There was like a combat catch guy, which I love that saying. I've never heard anyone refer to a receiver like that. Maybe you have, because you're the receiver guy, but a combat catch guy. So Metcalf can win in a variety of different ways, but how he was used in week one, is that a sign of what's to come here in Pittsburgh, do you think?
Well, two things. Number one, Mike Tomlin's on fire with his nicknames. He said Chris Boswell was a serial killer, and now he's in week one because he's stone cold killer at the end of the game with the field goal. So he's on fire with that. Number two, thanks for reminding me that Jory actually texted me about this DK Metcalf stuff. So I gotta text her back. So thank you for reminding me for that. Number three is that, I mean, the usage for Metcalf, I just think it's going to be very, very boom bust every single week. 92.3% snaps outside, just 5.8% in the slot. Moved him around not very often. He's mostly going to be that stuck to the line of scrimmage X receiver, which can have its moments in this offense. But I thought it was actually interesting that a lot of the play action shots that they got from this, an Arthur Smith offense that wants to be a very play action heavy group, the shot plays went to Calvin Austin. I don't know how sticky that is. I kind of think Calvin Austin is a nice player. Liked him a little bit as a prospect coming out, like a guy that could be a real deal role player. He has developed into a nice role player with the Pittsburgh Steelers. And he played a ton. I was stunned to see he ran around on 85.3% of the dropbacks. Like, this was not
he's the guy. He's the number two receiver there. Yeah.
And they've been hyping him up as that. So I think there's some, I kind of want to see one more week of it, but I do think there's some sustainability with just him as a role player for fantasy. Obviously, it's gonna be very hit or miss, but even that eats into the Metcalf thing. Cause I think for Metcalf in this offense, Boone, if he's going to be used in the way that you've highlighted, that Jory highlighted in the article a little bit, he's going to have to be a 30% target share player, and he was 24% in week one. That's not quite where we need him to be. He needs to be a lot higher because they're going to be run heavy. They're going to play at a slow pace. In this matchup against Seattle, I do think he probably wants some revenge on them. I think it's going to be really tough. Watching that Seattle defense back in week one, obviously Tariq Woolen's a guy you can get, but otherwise, they play a lot of really tight zone coverage, and that's not Metcalf's strength. If we're talking about him as what do you call him, a combat catch receiver,
combat catch guy.
I think he is a combative receiver against man coverage and ISO routes and stuff like that. Him sifting through zones, working back to the quarterback, that's not his strength. So I definitely don't know if this is setting up for some massive revenge spot for DK.
Yeah, and the Seahawks gave up the fourth fewest fantasy points to receivers last week. Like you said, this is a tough matchup for sure here. Ricky Pearsall did come through. I mean, 4 for 108 on 7 targets does sound like a DK Metcalf line, or at least a DK Metcalf line that we were used to in the past. So maybe he comes through for it, but I'd like to see them, be able to target him a little more downfield, use him that way. I think, for him to really be unlocked in fantasy, it's the volume thing, like you said, but it can't be all this short stuff. We can't rely every single week on him being able to gain yards after the catch in that way. And it's not going to be to the degree that he did in week 1. So we need a little different usage maybe from him, but definitely go read. We're talking about reading. Go read that Jory article because there's lots of good stuff in there.
Yes. You people out there, you go read the article. Okay. 2025, it's the year of reading. And this jackass, text your friend back about the article that you wrote. She sent me a snippet of it. I read the snippet. I got to just answer the text. But while I'm gearing up for that response, let's get to your 6th question here, Boone, your 6th and final one. And this is going to be a little bit of a tough conversation to have.
Yeah, I think you have some thoughts on this one. That's why I wanted to make sure we're going to talk about it. Who is coming to save the Texans offense? Who's it going to be, Harmon? Who's out there? Like, that week 1 performance was about as bad as it gets. Last year, we knew the offensive line was a huge problem. And I think that was a major reason why CJ Stroud took such a step back from his rookie year. And now this year they come out, and yes, week 1, a very tough Rams front to deal with. I think the offensive line was worse. I don't think they improved it in any way. I think it's worse. So now what, right? Like, and PFF grades, I know people think different things about them, but Pro Football Focus after week 1, the worst offensive line in the league, the Houston Texans, no surprises there whatsoever. And their rookie right tackle, who they took in the 2nd round, Ariante Ursi, he gave up 6 pressures and a sack. He was the lowest graded rookie lineman on the week. That's their 2nd round pick. I think that's the guy that they thought was going to be able to help here. Doesn't look like he's going to be able to help that much early on. His pass blocking grade, which out of 100, there are not many that are this low, 29.4 out of 100 in week 1. I'm sorry, I don't want to pick on the guy too much. It was his first game, but still just abysmal. And if we're looking for people who could be stepping up here and maybe helping them solve things moving forward, I just don't know who it is. Like, CJ Stroud struggling behind bad blocking last year, going to struggle behind bad blocking this year. And Nico Collins last season found a way to overcome everything. He overcame the injury, still had 1,000 yards and 7 touchdowns, even though he played 12 games, kind of a little less than 12 games because he missed, the majority of a couple others. But he still found a way to come through. But Harmon, I know we talked on Monday, the panic meter stuff, and someone asked about all the different receivers, the top guys. And I was saying, they're so talented. As the week's gone on, I've looked at this more. I'm a little more worried about Nico. It's not a huge panic. We're not total panic or anything like that, but it went from no panic at all to some panic, I would say. The more I went back and watched this game and the more I saw, are they going to have the time to get Nico the ball downfield the way they want to? I'm not so sure they're going to be able to.
Oh boy. Yeah, this is
tough. Oh, when you start with a sigh, that's bad.
That's not a good sign. Yeah, so I watched this game back and charted Nico Collins. Here's the good news. Nico Collins rocks. Okay, we didn't no new information there. Still great. The bad thing from a usage perspective for Nico Collins is that he was still exclusively, even more than last year, outside on the line of scrimmage, boundary X receiver. I thought that maybe Nick Caley coming in from the Rams, they might move Nico Collins around a little bit more, and maybe they will when their receiver core is close to fully operational. Christian Kirk obviously is out. He's probably going to miss this week as well. He's not practicing here on Thursday at the time we're recording this. He's probably going to miss this week. They had to play Xavier Hutchinson and Justin Watson. Justin Watson ran the most slot routes on this team. Woof. They're not ready to trust the rookies yet. So I think that means Nico has to just play one spot, but I was thinking he might move around a little bit more because of that coaching staff change. But we also have to remember Nick Caley also has a background with the Patriots. This offense felt a little more Patriots-y than Ramsey to me. Both that and in there's a lot of conversation about CJ Stroud taking on more ownership at the line of scrimmage, setting the protections and stuff like that. Stroud didn't do a very good job of that in week 1. There's a bunch of unblocked pressures. There's corner blitzes coming off here. I posted this clip that we're showing here on the YouTube stream right now where we've got exactly what we want. Nico Collins vertical route as the slot receiver, and he's going to get wide open, but there's no time to get to that part of the progression because guess what? Immediate pressure from the right tackle onto Ursary, who you highlighted there. It's just 1 week. Boone, I think if you're hopeful about this, we got to remember that this is the Rams defensive line. I think the Rams might end up having the best defensive line in the league this year. They were just unbelievably good. Really tough test on the road against that defense. That being said, for all of Todd Bowles' flaws, he will put together a good pressure package in this game on Monday night. So that I think is the key matchup to watch, is not just like the pass protection in general. It's just like, can this team pick up blitzes in week number 2 here?
Yeah, you mentioned the Christian Kirk thing, and maybe he'll be back soon. Maybe he could be the guy. The rookie receivers not really having much of an impact early in the season is unfortunate, because I think maybe they thought those guys would be able to contribute right away, and you have those other receivers playing. But I think if you need to find the silver lining, you hit on it at the very end there, right? They're going against the Bucs, and almost everybody gets to throw against the Bucs in that pass funnel. Yeah. And yes, Bowles will get some pressure in there, and that'll be problematic. But you just look, I mean, the Bucs have been one of the 8 easiest matchups for fantasy quarterbacks and for fantasy wideouts for 3 straight years before this year, right? Yeah. So like, there's some hope in that, you know, with that matchup, we're going to see it go the other way. But I don't even know that I'll feel that confident. I might just attribute some of it to the matchup and still be worried moving forward after week 2. And it's going to be maybe week to week based on who they're playing and what we're seeing from them the week before I actually start to trust this offense. And let's say they do come out and have another kind of bad game against the Bucs. We are going to be hitting the I don't want to spoil Monday's show or anything, but we're going to be hitting the panic button big time on Monday if they can't get it done. Or I guess they're playing Monday night, so we might have to wait, right? We might have to wait until later.
That's
in the
great.
Week for
Oh,
that.
Great. No, we don't have to talk about. We don't have to talk about Nico Collins and the People's Panic Meter, because we won't have the Houston Texans. They play the Jags in week 3, so like maybe that's the spot where it really gets going here. This is definitely trial by fire for the new offense, for the new offensive line, new offensive coordinator CJ Stroud handling the blitz protection. So because I was coming back to Kirk Cousins with the Falcons last year against the Bucs. He's the perfect encapsulation of how you beat, like, if you can set protections, even if you don't have like an elite offensive line, if you as a veteran quarterback can identify where the blitzes are coming from, can set the protections and just let it rip before the pass rush gets there, you're going to find holes all over that secondary. Can CJ Stroud do that? I think right now I'm still playing Nico. Like, if I have Nico Collins in fantasy, Boone, like I'm in a guillotine league where he was the guy that got cut in week 1. I spent like just a boatload of cash to get him on my team. Cause like he's on the waiver wire, you know, this is guillotine, right? So it's Nico Collins. So I'm playing him in week 2, come hell or high water. And if I'm in hell after this, then I think we have another conversation heading into week 3 in what's a much more friendly matchup.
Yeah, hopefully Nico Collins isn't on the waiver wire again next week, right? That's what we're gonna cross our fingers and hope in that league that he's not a free agent again next week.
Yeah, you and me both, buddy. That is definitely what we're hoping. All right. Now that was super depressing, we're going to take yet another quick break. We come back, we get into literally no one's games of the week right after this. All right, we are back. Now it is time for literally no one's games of the week. This is where I try to give some love, to 3 little freak show games each slate. They're not important games. They're not big games, but they're games we got to care about in fantasy football, starting with Cleveland Browns at Baltimore Ravens. As expected, this one's definitely buried on the 1 p.m. Eastern slate. Nobody cares about the Browns, but I mean, sticking with the revenge theme, Joe Flacco revenge game, obviously. Even though he's had nothing but good things to say about the Ravens, he's probably played the Ravens before at some point. He's played for a bajillion years. But Boone, before we get to the Ravens, there's been a lot of talk this week on the pod about the Browns. You had like 3 Browns players in the damn waiver wire segment in the first show of the week. Ray brought up the Browns. Even Nate Tice comes on here and says, like, sneaky good Browns offense. Like, we thought this was one of those teams that very early on in the season we're just going to be crossing out from a fantasy perspective. And maybe we're all over-indexing to them playing a terrible Bengals defense in week 1. But between the Harold Fannin breakout, the Cedric Tillman performance, where yet again he outproduces Jerry Jeudy, even though the fantasy bros wouldn't acknowledge it in the offseason. And we get 8 catches from old Dylan Sampson there. Is there some fantasy viability in an offense that we wanted to just cross off here? Or again, are we overreacting to them playing a bad defense and they're going to get obliterated by a great Ravens defense in week 2?
Oh, there's so much to consider with this one, not just this week, but like for the rest of the season when you're thinking about picking these guys up. But we're going where the value is. And because everybody was so down on this offense, that's why a bunch of these guys are available on the waiver wire. And yes, I think Cedric Tillman is a great pickup this week. I think Harold Vanna Jr. is a phenomenal pickup, like I talked about on Monday. And in a lot of leagues, you can still get these backs, right? Like Quinshon Judkins was only 55% rostered when I wrote that waiver wire article early in the week. I haven't looked at his rostership now. Dylan Sampson was under 50% roster, just barely, but I think he was like 47%. So you could have gone out earlier in the week and gotten these guys in some leagues and potentially ended up with the starting running back on an NFL team who you got off the waiver wire in a week when there wasn't any injuries at running back. There wasn't really a guy that was going to get thrust into a ton of opportunity. So yes, I mean, I think Tillman and Harold Vanna Jr. are the ones that I was most interested in. The running backs, we're just trying to find, is there going to be a starter that emerges from this offense? But one of the problems, it starts with the Ravens this week. You look at the schedule moving forward, right? Baltimore, Green Bay, the Lions, the Vikings, the Steelers. Like, this is a pretty tough slate, on top of the fact that if this team loses a ton of games, at what point do they go to the rookies? At what point does Dylan Gabriel get in there? I think he'll be the first one to get a shot. And maybe we'll see Shedeur Sanders at some point, but it's not going to be Joe Flacco's team all year. And without Joe Flacco out there, that's going to become a big problem fantasy wise. So you're kind of trying to balance that. But right now, it is going to be Flacco going back to Baltimore. I believe this is the first time he's gone back to Baltimore since he played there, which seems crazy because it was long time ago when he was in Baltimore. But he can throw the ball around quite a bit like we saw last week, and they're going to have to throw against the Ravens. Like, they're not going to be able to run the ball that well. We're not sure what the running back situation is going to be this week. Quinshon Judkins is back at practice, but he missed Wednesday's practice to go meet with NFL officials. He's back out there today, so he's going to get a couple practices in. Will they even activate him for the game? I don't know. And if he is activated, I don't think he's going to necessarily be the lead back right away. So he's going to then turn this into more of a committee with Dylan Sampson and Jerome Ford doing a little bit out there. Sampson looked pretty good. I mean, he was productive last week. He didn't really run the ball that well, but had a lot of catches, put up some decent stats fantasy-wise. So we'll see. I mean, there's opportunity on that Browns offense for sure. And I think once, with Flacco still out there, they can come through. But yeah, it's not the place you necessarily want to put all your chips. It's just a place where there was a bunch of guys available on the waiver wire and there could be value. So we're going to that spot.
Yeah, just for people out there, Boone he's got the classic hedge ranking. Respect the hell out of this. He's got Harold Fannin at number 10 tight end, and then David Njoku is tight end 11. Which, I mean, yeah, David Njoku, like Harold Fannin, his emergence did not cut into David Njoku's playing time, and he did still get 6 targets. Now they just threw the ball a ton, which was surprising. That's the one thing that I actually think that Dylan Gabriel, he got a lot of crap. I mean, it was a crazy draft pick to take him in the 3rd round just because, like, he's never going to be an NFL starter. But I think he could maybe be, like, functional in the right situation. But they won't drop back to pass as much as they have with Joe Flacco, like in week 1, and probably they will this week because they'll be in negative game script. But even in neutral situations, like that was a close game and they still pass the football a ton. But like for right now, I think you could probably start both of these tight ends. Like if you have Harold Fannin, and Boone is saying like tight end 10, you could start this guy this week. I'm with him. I think you could start him as well. I think Cedric Tillman's a guy that you could play. I think Jerry Jeudy is a guy you could play. I wouldn't be messing around with any of these running backs. That's for sure. Not in this matchup. Speaking of running backs and matchups here, we showed the quote earlier. Let's throw this back up. Brown safety Grant Delpit said when asked how hard is Ravens running back Derrick Henry to bring down, Grant Delpit said, quote, "Not hard." Derrick Henry was asked about this in the Ravens locker room. He just said, "We'll see on Sunday." Probably not what I would say. If it's me, I wouldn't say that going into a matchup with Derrick Henry, but what do I know? I'm just some jackass with a podcast, not a NFL defensive player. From a Ravens offense perspective, I think the biggest question that people have here this week is Zay Flowers. Like, Zay Flowers has this monster game in week 1. Where do you rank him heading into week number 2 here?
Yeah, he has to move up into that low end wide receiver 2 range. Now, we saw him get a ton of volume. The question too is just, can he inflate the touchdown total? That's been one of the things that's held him back so far. If he can start to find the end zone a little more, we know touchdowns are very volatile year over year. If he can start to find the end zone a little more, all of a sudden now, there's the talent, the opportunity for him to totally be a top 20, top 24 receiver. I have him ranked in that range, I believe, this week. I don't have my ranking memorized, unfortunately, on him. I could probably pull it up if we need to. But yeah, he's in that range because of what we saw in week 1. It wasn't just the Bills' injuries. That helped, but he came through. They want to use him this way. I know you love Rashad Bateman, but Zay Flowers is the top receiver on that team. And if Mark Andrews is going to take a bit of a step back here, then who else are they looking to? Like, DeAndre Hopkins did not play that much last week. I know he caught the touchdown, but he is just going to be like a contributor in this offense. He is not the DeAndre Hopkins of old. Zay Flowers is the star pass catcher on this team. And yeah, I think he's a great play this week.
Yeah, you have him as wide receiver 19. I've got him at 14. I'm buying into what, not maybe every week we're going to see that kind of eruption, but I'm buying into the role that Zay Flowers has. I mean, like you said, I love Rashad Bateman, but that's like a post-fantasy take. That's like, we're beyond fantasy when we're appreciating the Rashad Bateman stuff. He's going to have some games. I actually think, I mean, he's going to have some dud games like he did like this past week, but that's against like a secondary that is pretty good. If they've got Christian Benford as the outside corner, they're able to move Zay Flowers around, create those matchups. Like, that's the type of fantasy receiver you want if he can continue to have this sort of volume. That's the big question, but I'm definitely playing Zay Flowers this week if I have him, and I do have him on a couple of teams here. Let's go to the next game here. Broncos at Colts. Maybe I'm cheating with this one because I think people are intrigued by the Danny Dimes stuff. This is like two quarterbacks on the other end of the spectrum here, Boone, in that like people were in on Bo Nix and he had a terrible week 1. Nobody was really in on Danny Dimes and he had a great week 1. So the question is just like, what do we see out of these offenses here in week 2? And is there anyone in the circle of trust yet in these offenses here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm willing to play the backs in Denver for sure. Like, RJ Harvey, didn't get that many touches, but he showed what he can do with them. And I think that's only going to lead to more opportunity as we go. And we talked before the season about this is an offense that can support 2 running backs. And we saw in week 1, they were able to do that. So I'm more than willing to play those guys. Cortland Sutton continues to be Cortland Sutton, and he's not really like the sexiest fantasy player, but you can put him in your lineup and he's going to rack up the stats. We don't really know who to trust among the other receivers. They're doing the rotation thing. We'll see. Like, I don't think any of them are going to have enough other than spike weeks here or there to be a trusted member of your lineup. The tight end situation in Denver, even though we thought they had the answer in Evan Ingram, I know he had the injury. It looks like he's going to be able to play this week, but he wasn't playing enough snaps to really consider him as a fantasy starter. He's somebody that needs the volume. And if he's not going to play a full complement of snaps, now you have to be very concerned. He falls way down into the tight end 2 ranks. So many better options. And you think about all the guys that were available on the waiver wire this week, I would play them over him, right? Like Brenton Strange, Harold Fannin Jr., of course, but Brenton Strange, Zach Ertz tonight. You look at Hunter Henry, Juwan Johnson. I would play all of those guys over Evan Ingram right now. Quarterback-wise, I'm looking at Bo Nix right now just as a high-end QB2. I think we need to see a little more from him. And I think this matchup with the Colts is tougher than we realized. And we talked about that after the week 1 game, right? That it wasn't just that the Dolphins defense was so bad and the Colts were able to do whatever they wanted, but I think the Colts defense is a little better than we expected. Lou Anarumo being there now, they're scheming it up a little better. I think that's interesting and could maybe make this game a little less exciting for fantasy if both these defenses are playing very, very tough. So I think on the Denver side, that's how I'm approaching it. And then on the Colts side, we have to give Michael Pittman the dock, right? He's the one that unfortunately is drawing the Pat Surtain situation. It won't be every single snap, but he'll see him a little bit, I believe, this week. So now what, right? Like, he had a very good game in week 1, but we saw what happened to Calvin Ridley, and we've seen what happens to other receivers that go up against this Broncos defense in terms of the top guy. So Worried about Pittman this week for sure. I mean, you look at that Colts offense, like it's a tougher matchup for Jonathan Taylor, and we'll see how much DJ Giddens is involved. Like last week, I think it was because they were up so much that they let him kind of get some run. Jonathan Taylor's obviously in your lineup, but not sure this is going to be a boom game for him. I'm not playing Daniel Jones, and I had Daniel Jones in my waiver wire column, but I explained in that, hopefully going with our theme, people actually read and they didn't just look at his name there and rush out to pick him up. It's that he's more of a long-term play. He showed what the ceiling can be in week one. Now, is he going to be able to do that? This is not the matchup where he's going to be able to do that. We're going to look to other games where he might do that. So you go get him now and you potentially play him down the road. But I'm not going to risk Daniel Jones going out there this week, even though the rushing ability could potentially, give him a pretty high floor. I do not want to play him against the Broncos.
Yeah, no, I mean, unless you're like in a tough spot from a super flex standpoint, I think you're probably not playing Danny Dimes. Although, again, really good performance in week one. How sustainable is it? It's definitely the complete opposite from a secondary perspective, because not only is Pat Surtain awesome, I thought Riley Moss was really good in week one for the Denver Broncos, and he's a good man coverage corner, a guy that played well last year, played a little bit worse when he came back from injuries, but definitely bounced back really well in week one. I mean, he was mostly covering Alec Iomanner, like a day 3 rookie, but still he just good instincts in man coverage, good sticky cornerback. So like whether it is Michael Pittman or like Alec Pierce gets sacrificed to Pat Surtain a couple of times as the X receiver, I'm looking at this right now on BetMGM, Tyler Warren over under 4.5 receptions plus odds on the over on that. I think Tyler Warren could catch like 10 passes in this game. Just like the Mickey Mouse stuff. Now, maybe they play Josh Downs more. Let's hope they play Josh Downs more. Hopefully they're just easing him back in coming off of a hamstring injury. I mean, I love Josh Downs, but I don't know either. The reality is like Josh Downs is always is getting hurt all the time. Like he's always banged up. He's not somebody that they can really count on from an availability standpoint. So that's just like, that's the way that is right now. I'm hoping they were just easing him in last week because they played so many like tight ends and stuff like that. And he's just only going to be on the field in 3 receiver sets. That was surprising to me. So maybe Josh Downs bounces back here with a nice game because he just plays more. We'll see. But from a fantasy standpoint, Tyler Warren, I mean, might be like the tight end 3 this week behind only McBride and Bowers if he plays on Monday night. And like I said, I'm not telling you to go – I'm not giving you betting advice here, folks, but plus odds on the over on 4.5 catches for Tyler Warren. I know your boy's going to be sprinkling a little something on that.
I have him as tight end 4 this week, and yeah, he is just an automatic start already. One of the biggest risers after week 1 at a position where other than those top 2, because George Kittle's hurt now, other than those top 2, you don't feel that great that any of them are going to come through with big games. Tyler Warren's getting pretty close to that. We get a couple more performances like that, and he is going to be right in that mix as a consistent top 5 option if he's not already there.
Let's get to the next game here and our final one, Patriots at Dolphins, which has got to be the grossest game on the slate for sure. Like what we got to find out what both these offenses are, I mean, obviously the Dolphins are the Dolphins. I don't know that I think we've said all we need to say on that team, both from the offseason and throughout this season. This is kind of like Dan Hansis used to be with the NFL Network, obviously a colleague back there, but now he's with Heed the Call podcast. He used to call it like the wounded animal game. Just 2 teams limping. I feel like these 2 teams, maybe I'm too spooked by what the Patriots offense looked like last week, but I kind of feel like this is a wounded animal game. I mean, my God, Mike McDaniel, again, just can't stop giving out quotes. He says this on tight end Darren Waller's availability for week 2. I expect to not know what to expect until later on this week. We may get to a point where we realize the risk is too great for the rest of the season and we'll have to do what's best for the team. I mean, that sounds like he's talking about a wounded animal right there. Like, what are we doing here with these 2 teams coming in here week 2? Again, I think we know what the Dolphins are. Unless you have any more thoughts on the Dolphins, I want to talk to you about the Patriots. Like, Ray and I debated Kayshon Boutte yesterday as like the sustainability to what he showed in week 1. I was probably too harsh maybe in calling it like a fluke performance because he's still going to be on the field a ton. I just don't expect him to be like the lead target getter and, go for 100 yards. But I was probably a little harsh in calling it a fluke, but I still think he's mostly like a sacrificial X receiver that maybe shouldn't even be playing X based on his collegiate profile and the stuff I charted from him back in the day. So to me, I just don't really know what to do with that. Our guy Travion Henderson did not get a lot of work in week 1. What do you feel about the Patriots offense heading into this game?
Yeah, I think for Booty, it's like he's almost like the guy by default right now, right? Like Stephon Diggs, I don't think is back to form. Like I don't think he's 100% an older receiver coming off a serious injury. I don't think he's the Stephon Diggs that we know and love, or some people love. So you look at that. Demario Douglas is what Demario Douglas is, right? He's not somebody that's going to rack up, huge numbers. He's just a solid contributor in the offense. So without Kyle Williams coming on, like who's it going to be? Well, it's Booty right now, right? Like, and he had a good game in week 1. I'm totally with you that I don't think it's going to be consistent. He'll have some other big games, but I don't think he's suddenly going to emerge as like a true star in this offense. I think Travion Henderson is, and I know that the numbers weren't big in week 1, but he did get, he got over 10 touches in the game. And I think that's a number that's just going to grow over time. And it was his first performance, and it was that weird game in the rain and all this sort of stuff. Well, he gets just the perfect opportunity. You said wounded animal game. It's like, what about floundering dolphin game, right? Like that's how I see Mike McDaniel. Like every time he gets on the mic, he's just saying like crazy, like, what are you doing? You have no command of the room anymore. I think that's huge, right? Like, I think he's kind of lost the ear of the players there, and there isn't really anyone there who's going to step up. Like, who's the leader on that team who's going to, like, apparently they had a players only meeting. I would love to know who ran that meeting, right? Like, it's obviously not Tyreek Hill, I hope. So who's the one doing it? Is it Tua? I just don't know who the personality is there that's taking command of that team and trying to get things right. And I was joking on KOC's show yesterday that, like, some teams are like, bad things are coming and they try to figure out a way to like steer away from the iceberg. I feel like with the Dolphins, they were on land looking at the iceberg and they got into the boat and just drove straight at the iceberg and they didn't really do anything at all. They're not even trying to get out of the way. It's coming. It's going to happen. It might already be here. What are they doing? Like, it's such a strange situation. And I think it's a spot where Henderson is going to capitalize, where he's going to be able to come out and take advantage of this defense the way that the Colts did last week. The Colts running backs ran all over them. I think Henderson's going to have a very good game here en route to being a very good fantasy player. And I think this might be one of the last chances that people have to potentially buy low on him or to buy him at all. So if you want Henderson on your team, now is the time to get those trade offers out there, because this could be an absolute blow up game for him.
Right. And obviously it's just risky to go out there and to play Travion Henderson after just 52.4% of the backfield touches, 11 touches overall. That does make him risky, but yeah, that might be why this is the time to go out and grab him. Otherwise, yeah, I mean, just in the passing game, again, maybe I'm wrong about Kayshon Boutte and he is going to emerge here and he's like a breakout receiver this year. I just think it's going to have to come with him moving away from X receiver and like Kyle Williams gets in there and then maybe he gets some more layup touches. It's just his skill set as a true X is a little tough right now. But in this week, I think if you need to play him, you can, because that Dolphins defense is very, very, very bad. So I'd love to see the Patriots just come out here and like put a mature win up in this one. But we are going to throw to our final break. When we come back, we've got the hurry up offense, rapid fire, questions, predictions, everything that's coming up right after this break. All right, we are back, and it is time. This is where Boone and I go rapid fire through the rest of the show. Bold predictions, questions to respond to for week 2 in 40 seconds or less. The twist is one guy can stop the whole proceedings, throw the challenge flag, and force the other to expand on their answer reaction if it is warranted. Once the flag is thrown, can't be thrown again for this week. So with that, welcome to the hurry up offense. All right, Boone, you are first. What is your first question here in the hurry up offense?
All right, so we've had a week now, or almost a week, to like start to digest what happened in week 1. What surprised you the most from the first weekend of games?
Ooh, what surprised me the most from the first weekend of the games? That's a good one. I think God, producer Colin's going to be so mad at me that I'm mentioning this team again. But like, I think how much I actually kind of enjoyed the Saints offense, and that I think it might be the perfect bad offense for fantasy football with all the pace, the concentrated targets to the wide receivers and the tight end. Like us getting maybe some usable players in the Saints, like maybe 3 usable players. Don't want to get crazy. Maybe 3 usable players in the Saints passing game. That's what I would say was the most surprise.
All right. I like it. Yeah, good volume coming out of that Saints offense. Certainly.
All right. My first one for you. Be honest with me, Boone. Did you at any point think of me and my Trent Richardson situational-based fantasy comparison in week 1 as Ashton Genty scored 11 fantasy points on 21 touches, but averaged just 2 yards per carry?
I remember and log a lot of things you say. I completely forgot that you had made that comparison. No, I did not think about that in week 1, but now that you bring it up, yikes. Uh-oh. No, I think he's going to be fine, man. Like, I just think we expect so much from these rookies right away, and let's give him a little bit of time. He's a good player. He's just not Bijan Robinson or Saquon Barkley. He's like a tier below those guys in terms of being a prospect. So not super surprised that it was a little bit quieter of a debut.
Yeah, and I'll take the last 8 seconds here to say that the Raiders' run blocking offensive line might be the worst in the NFL. Super reactionary to say after week 1, but potentially true. All right, give me your next one here.
All right, which waiver wire pickup that you personally made this week do you think is going to have the biggest season-long fantasy impact for you?
Well, I mean, it's got to be the Nico Collins in the Guillotine League, but other than that...
Yeah, that's cheap.
That's cheap. Other than that, I was able to grab Harold Fannin in one of the leagues I'm in, and I do think that that's actually going to make a pretty significant difference for me over the course of the season, because like we said, he's basically the Browns slot receiver. He was targeted on almost 30% of his routes. I don't want to overreact, but again, really big role in week 1. So I'm hoping that it's Harold Fannin, Boone.
Yeah, a rookie that had the kind of production that he had in college coming out in his very first game and doing that. Come on. He's a great pickup.
All right. This is not a question. This is just a statement. Marvin Harrison Jr. would be a 1,300-yard wide receiver in the NFL if he played with literally any quarterback other than Kyler Murray, Justin Boone. Any other quarterback.
Ooh, wow. I don't know if I'm giving that to you yet. I still think he has a little bit that's on his end. It's not just because of the quarterback. It's not just because it would help. He would definitely be better. I don't know if I'm going to say 1,300 yards though, but no, I'm not going to agree with that one. I think I'm going to say that no, it wouldn't be 1,300. It would be better. It wouldn't be 1,300. I'm not going to put it all on Kyler and the system and all that sort of stuff. I think he still has a little bit of learning and adapting to do himself.
No, wrong, incorrect. The amount of times I watched in week 1 charting Marvin Harrison Jr., that guy is wide open on dig routes that this offense wants to hit, and Kyler's just back there goofing around in the pocket, scrambling, not throwing. I just won't throw it. It was. I know there was the one big post that everybody. Maybe I'm throwing the flag on myself right now. I know there's one big post that everybody saw that could have been like a 98-yard touchdown. That might not even have been the worst one, because at least Kyler threw it and he missed the hell out of it. There were ones, so many that he just didn't throw. It was driving me crazy. Okay. All right, you give me your next one here as I try to recover.
All right, I'm going to say you can't say the Cardinals after that last answer, but which offense are you most worried about? Which offense are you most worried about after the first week?
I think it's the Chiefs. I mean, it's hard to say just because obviously they have Patrick Mahomes, and quite frankly, like there's not a lot of players I'm invested in here. I have like maybe a random. I got like a random. You know what? I'll give you a different one. Trevor Lawrence after week 1 and the Jaguars offense. I'm nervous about the way Trevor Lawrence played in that game. I don't want to fully panic yet. I'm not like the panic meter. I'm not at full panic, but I'm like, please, Trevor Lawrence, go out and drop a hammer on the Bengals in week 2 to ease all of our concerns.
Fair enough. All right. I like it. Let's pick up the pace here. It's supposed to be the hurry up.
Also, yeah, I know. Sorry. You know what? I should have said the Panthers. Anyways. Okay. All right. Any thought to placing AJ Brown on your bench here in week 2 after what we saw in week 1?
None. Did you see the interview with him? Like, how funny was that?
I
He
did.
was just like, no, I'm totally healthy. That's not the problem at all. It was just the way they were playing me, which I think is a weird response. Like, I almost wish that he was like, yeah, I wasn't feeling 100%. It wasn't that the defense took me out of it, because now other defenses are just going to do the same thing to you, man. Like, why are you saying that? Regardless, he seems to have had the relationship with Jalen Hurts where when he complains, the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and I think he is going to get a lot of targets this week. Not worried about him at all. Not putting him on my bench.
All right, I love it. I got nothing on that. Give me your next one.
All right. Which wide receiver do you not look forward to charting? And it doesn't mean that you dislike the player by any means, right? But is there somebody out there that, like, you just don't enjoy sitting down and having to chart them for whatever reason?
I tend to think that I
tried
can
to buy you
find
some
joy in
time
almost...
there because I knew you'd have to think about this one.
Oh, I was going to say, I can't think. There's not too many that I just outright can't stand. It's probably guys that are in bad route runners and like can't win contested catches. Because I'll let it go if you can't separate, if you can't run routes. But like, if you also don't bring me anything after the catch and you're not a ball winner, then I really don't I don't get anything out of that.
All right, fair enough. We're going to avoid giving a name. I'm going to let you slide there. We won't offend anybody.
No names.
That's the
Correct.
type of receiver. All right, fair enough. Fair enough. I'll let that go.
Okay. All right. Who is on your radar as like the fantasy football community, quote, jumped the shark on this guy pick coming out of week 1? This can be either people were overreacting to coming out of week 1 or like, oh man, people talked him up in the offseason and like after 1 week, like as some kind of super whatever. I don't see that at all.
I mean, it's probably cheap because we already talked about him. I mean, Evan Ingram would certainly be up there on that list where I think people were talking themselves into the Joker thing. And then, Kay Adams asked Sean Payton about the Joker thing. And he was like, yeah, Evan Ingram, he's a Joker. And yet they're not using him that much on the offense. And it doesn't seem like he's going to have like this huge role out there, which seems very strange. So I think he would be the answer. If I let you go on the last one, not giving a full name, you got to let me go on this one, actually doing the Evan Ingram.
You gave a name. Yeah, you gave a name. That's fine. I think we all could have done better in our lives if we didn't hear the word Joker. All right, let's get one more in a piece, but 1 word, 2 word answers here. Give me one. I'll do one. Let's let it rip.
All right. During football season, what is and I'm asking this because I need advice on this because I'm bad about it. I'm working all the time. What's your go-to hobby or pastime that's non-football related that you always make time for?
Oh my God. That's the worst question to ask me. Like, I don't even know if I have any hobbies. Working out. And
for the record, producer Colin and I
morning.
were guessing about what your answer would be to this. So I'm curious to see what you actually said.
Okay, yeah, probably like walking and listening to audiobooks in the morning. That's like making sure I get my steps in. That's so boring.
Are
but
you walking the dogs at that point?
No, hell no. I'm enjoying that. They're not with me. I'm enjoying my cup of coffee. I got my weighted vest on. I'm that guy. Okay. All right. Like I said, that was supposed to be 1 word, but you asked me like the most complicated question. So we'll talk offline. All right. Last one for me here. Where are you ranking Ricky Pearsall if Mac Jones is starting?
He's still like a borderline wide receiver 2, just based on the situation, right? Like all the other guys that are missing there. I think Mac Jones is going to be okay in that offense. Kyle Shanahan can scheme it up. It's like the Kevin O'Connell thing where we've seen quarterbacks actually play pretty well and produce in that system. I think Mac Jones is going to be all right. He's not going to be Brock Purdy. He's going to be okay because we're missing so many other guys. Ricky Pearsall is going to get a lot of volume. So he's right in the middle of the 20s, around wide receiver 25, 26 for me.
All right, so clearly what we learned from that hurry up offense segment is that Boone and I got to get better at our rapid fire and 2-word answers to questions. But Boone, appreciate it, man. I think we fully covered through week 2 on this one. Again, the theme of the podcast, read the stuff on the website. Boone is doing great work. Make sure you check that out. Make sure you're dialed into his rankings here heading into week 2 as well. And of course, please make sure you watch Fantasy Football Live on Sunday morning. Boone will be there. Chris Allen will be there. Jason Fitz, I'll be there to get you ready for week 2. That is live 11:30 a.m. Eastern on Sunday morning. You can watch it right here on this YouTube channel. But that is going to do it for us today. Our Sunday recap shows, remember, they are live as well this year. So we're going to be going live as soon as the late game windows end each week. So when Eagles Chiefs hits 000 this week, come right back here and join Chris Allen and I on YouTube to recap all of that. Until then, we are out.